He did not remember deciding to help. It felt more like his body moved before his thoughts could catch up, like a reflex he didn't know he had. One moment, Aaron Cole was counting the cracks in the pavement outside the subway station, waiting for the light to change, and the next he was stepping into the street, arm outstretched, shouting words he barely recognized as his own. The man on the bike was wobbling, the front wheel caught in a groove between the rails. The delivery bag swung wildly, throwing his balance off. Cars honked. Someone screamed. Aaron grabbed the rider's jacket and yanked him back just as a bus roared past, close enough that the wind of it slapped Aaron's face. They both fell onto the pavement. For a few seconds, the world narrowed to the sound of Aaron's breathing and the sharp sting in his palms. When he pushed himself up, the biker was staring at him, eyes wide, mouth open, as if trying to speak, but unable to find the words. "You okay?" Aaron asked, his voice shaking. The biker nodded rapidly. You saved me," he said, his accent thick, his hands trembling as he tried to stand. "I didn't see the rail. I swear I didn't see it." Aaron shrugged, suddenly uncomfortable. Anyone would have done it. But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't true. Plenty of people had been there. They'd watched. Some had pulled out phones. No one else had moved. The biker thanked him again and again before riding off, disappearing into traffic like nothing had happened. The light changed. People crossed the street. The city swallowed the moment. Aaron stood there longer than he should have, heart still hammering, palms bleeding slightly. He wrapped them in tissues from his pocket and went on with his day. At least, he tried to. That night, he couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the bus rushing past. Felt the weight of the biker's body as he pulled him back. The thought hit him over and over. If he'd been half a second later, someone would be dead, or maybe two people. Aaron had lived most of his life carefully. He worked a predictable job as an assistant accountant, rented a small apartment he rarely invited anyone into, and avoided risks the way some people avoided illness. He believed in staying out of trouble and not getting involved. Helping once had cracked something open inside him, something he didn't know how to close again. The next morning, he was late to work for the first time in 3 years. His boss noticed, of course. "Everything okay, Aaron?" she asked, peering at him over her glasses. "Yeah," he said automatically. "Just traffic." But traffic wasn't the problem. The problem was that on his walk to the office, he'd noticed things he usually ignored. The woman crying on a bench. The old man struggling with a broken shopping cart. The kid sitting on the sidewalk, backpack clutched to his chest, staring at the ground like it had personally betrayed him. Each time, Aaron slowed down. Each time. He kept walking. By lunchtime, his chest felt tight, like he was holding his breath without realizing it. He ate alone at his desk, scrolling mindlessly through news on his phone when a headline caught his eye. Delivery rider injured in hit and run. The photo was grainy, but he recognized the jacket instantly. His stomach dropped. The article said the rider had been hospitalized with serious injuries after being struck by a car late the previous night. No suspects. No witnesses willing to come forward. Aaron stared at the screen until the words blurred. He told himself it was coincidence. Lots of riders wore jackets like that. Lots of accidents happened in the city. But he knew. The thought haunted him for days. He started taking longer routes home, as if avoiding the subway station would somehow undo what had already happened. He replayed the moment again and again, wondering if he could have done more. If he should have asked for the man's number. If he should have waited with him longer. If helping once had created a responsibility he'd failed to understand. A week later, someone knocked on his apartment door. Aaron opened it to find a woman in her 30s, dark circles under her eyes. holding a paper bag. "Are you Aaron Cole?" she asked. "Yes, yes." "My brother said a man named Aaron saved his life last week," she said. "At the subway tracks. That was you, right?" Aaron nodded, throat tight. She exhaled shakily and pressed the bag into his hands. "Thank you. He's still in the hospital. But if you hadn't pulled him back, he wouldn't be there at all." Inside the bag was homemade bread, still warm. After she left, Aaron sat on the floor of his apartment, the bag in his lap, and cried harder than he had in years. Something shifted after that. He started saying yes to things he used to avoid. He helped the old man with the broken cart. He asked the crying woman if she was okay. He sat next to the kid on the sidewalk and listened to a story about a stolen bike and a ruined week. It wasn't heroic. It wasn't dramatic. But it changed him. People began to recognize him. The man who helped. The guy who listens. Someone recommended him for a volunteer position at a local shelter. He told himself he'd only do it once, but once, it turned out, was never really once. Months passed, and Aaron's life slowly rearranged itself around these moments. His job felt smaller. His apartment felt emptier. He felt fuller. He only helped once, he used to. Now he wasn't so sure where it had started or where it would end at sometimes. Late at night, he still thought about the bus rushing past, but now, instead of fear, he felt something steadier. Like purpose had found him by accident and decided to stay. The second time Aaron truly noticed the change was when he walked past an accident and didn't freeze. His body moved again, but this time, his mind followed. He called for help, spoke calmly, held a stranger's hand until the ambulance arrived. Afterward, he stood there shaking, not from fear, but from the realization that this was becoming part of who he was. Weeks later, the delivery rider invited him to his home for dinner. They laughed, shared food, and spoke about small things. Aaron understood then that helping didn't end with the act itself. It echoed, quietly, into other lives. Years from that first moment, someone else would stand where Aaron once had, hesitating at the edge of a decision. And because of the way Aaron lived after helping once, that person would step forward too. Aaron never meant for helping to become a habit. At first, he told himself it was temporary, a phase brought on by shock and gratitude and the strange intensity of being seen differently by strangers. But habits have a way of growing roots, especially when they quietly change the way you see yourself. The shelter smelled like disinfectant and old coffee. On his first official volunteer shift, Aaron stood near the door longer than necessary, reading the same notice on the wall again and again. He felt out of place, too clean, too unsure. Everyone else seemed to know where to go, what to do, how to speak to people whose lives were cracked open in ways Aaron had only recently begun to understand. A coordinator named Ruth noticed him hovering. "First day?" she asked, smiling. Kindly. He nodded. "I'm not sure I'm very useful." Ruth handed him a clipboard. None of us were at first. His first task was simple: serve meals, refill water, listen if someone talked. He expected gratitude, or at least acknowledgement. What he didn't expect was anger. One man snapped at him for pouring too slowly. A woman accused him of staring. Someone else ignored him completely. By the end of the night, Aaron's feet hurt, and his confidence was gone. On his walk home, the old voice returned, whispering that this wasn't his world, that helping once didn't mean he belonged everywhere. The next morning, he found himself thinking about a man at the shelter who hadn't spoken at all. He'd sat hunched over his meal, hands shaking, eyes fixed on the table. Aaron hadn't known what to say, so he'd said nothing. The thought bothered him all day. That evening, Aaron went back. Weeks passed. Slowly, faces became familiar. The Angry man apologized one night without explanation. The quiet man eventually spoke, telling Aaron about a job lost to illness and a family that stopped calling. Aaron learned to listen without trying to fix everything, a skill that felt harder than any spreadsheet he'd ever balanced. His job began to suffer. He missed deadlines. He stared at his screen, numbers blurring together. When his boss called him into her office, her expression was careful. "You seem distracted," she said. "Is something going on?" Aaron thought of lying. Instead, he told her the truth, or part of it. "I don't think I want to do this forever." She studied him for a long moment. "Then don't," she said. "But don't stay halfway either." The idea terrified him. Change had always been something that happened to other people. One rainy evening, as Aaron left the shelter, he saw a familiar face across the street. The delivery rider, older now, walking with a slight limp, stood under a flickering streetlight, arguing with a parking officer. Aaron crossed without thinking. They recognized each other instantly. "You," the rider said, breaking into a grin. "You're everywhere." They laughed, the sound cutting through the rain. The rider told him he'd started training others, pushing for safer routes, fewer impossible deadlines. "I almost died," he said simply. "After that, you stop. Pretending speed is worth everything." The words stayed with Aaron. That night, alone in his apartment, Aaron made a decision he'd been circling for months. He typed out his resignation letter slowly, hands shaking, heart racing. He didn't feel brave. He felt like someone stepping off a ledge, hoping the ground would rise to meet him. The weeks after quitting were the hardest of his life. Money became tight. His parents worried. Friends didn't understand why he'd leave something stable for something uncertain. Some days, Aaron worried too. He applied for work at nonprofits, clinics, community centers. Rejections piled up, but something else piled up too: experience, connections, trust. At the shelter, Ruth began assigning him more responsibility. He helped organize resources, coordinate volunteers, advocate for individuals who were slipping through the cracks. He learned how systems failed quietly, not through cruelty alone, but through exhaustion and neglect. One afternoon, a young woman named Maya came in with a split lip and a bruised arm. She refused medical help, refused police, refused to say much at all. Aaron sat with her for nearly an hour in silence. Finally, she said, "Why are you here?" He answered honestly, "Because someone once helped me when they didn't have to." She nodded as if that explained everything. Months later, Aaron received an offer from a small community outreach program. The pay was modest. The work was overwhelming. He accepted without hesitation. His days filled with stories, some hopeful, many not. He learned that helping didn't always look like success. Sometimes it looked like setbacks, relapses, anger turned inward. Sometimes it meant being the last person someone spoke to, before disappearing again. The weight of it all nearly broke him once. After a particularly hard loss, Aaron sat alone on the shelter steps long after closing, head in his hands. He wondered if helping had been a mistake, if he'd confused purpose with obligation. Ruth sat beside him without speaking. After a while, she said, "You're allowed to care without carrying everything." Aaron breathed out slowly. He learned balance the way people learn after falling carefully, with scars. Years passed. Aaron's life no longer resembled the one he'd lived before the subway station. His apartment was smaller. His schedule was unpredictable. His world was louder, messier, heavier. It was also fuller. One afternoon, while speaking at a community safety workshop, Aaron noticed a young man in the back of the room, arms crossed, eyes distant. Something about him felt familiar. After the session, the young man approached. "I saw you once," he said. "Years ago. You pulled someone out of traffic." Aaron blinked, surprised. "You remember that?" "I was scared to help," man admitted. "But after that, I didn't feel so scared anymore." They stood there for a moment, the weight of years folding into a single breath. That night, walking home, Aaron realized something quietly profound. The moment he'd helped once hadn't just changed his life. It had changed the shape of other people's decisions too, in ways he'd never see and didn't need to. He paused at a crosswalk, the city humming around him. The light changed. People surged forward. Aaron stepped with them, no longer counting. Cracks in the pavement, no longer waiting for something to happen. He was already moving. Aaron used to believe that change arrived like a single sharp moment, something loud and undeniable. Over time, he learned that real change often arrived quietly, disguised as routine. By the time 5 years had passed, his name was no longer attached to a single shelter or program. He moved between community centers, hospitals, outreach vans, and meeting rooms that smelled faintly of burnt coffee. He knew which streets flooded first in heavy rain, which buildings hid people no one counted, which phone numbers never got answered after midnight. He also knew the cost. There were mornings he woke up already tired. There were nights he lay awake replaying conversations, wondering if he'd said the wrong thing, missed a sign, pushed too hard or not enough. The faces of people he couldn't help followed him in quiet moments, lining up behind his eyes. Burnout didn't arrive all at once. It crept in. It showed up as impatience, as numbness, as the temptation to see people as cases instead of humans. The first time Aaron noticed it, he was sitting in an outreach van while a man shouted at him for offering clean socks. The anger rolled off the man in waves, sharp and personal. Aaron felt something inside him harden. "Fine," he snapped, pulling his hand back. "Forget it." The words hung between them, heavier than they should have been. The man stared, hurt flashing across his face before he turned away. Aaron didn't sleep that night. The next day, he went back to that street. He found the man sitting against the same wall, wrapped in a thin blanket. Aaron crouched down and held out the socks again, this time without speaking. The man took them. Neither said thank you, but something inside Aaron softened again. He realized then that helping wasn't about being endlessly kind or endlessly strong. It was about returning, even after failing. Around that time, Aaron's father got sick. The call came early in the morning, his mother's voice strained and careful. Aaron flew home the same day, the city shrinking beneath the plane as guilt pressed down on his chest. He'd missed birthdays, holidays, casual phone calls. He'd always told himself there would be time. Hospitals felt different when the person in the bed shared your blood. Aaron sat beside his father, listening to the machines breathe. The man who had once taught him how to ride a bike, how to tie a knot, how to stay quiet when unsure, looked suddenly fragile. "You look tired," his father said softly. Aaron smiled. "So do you?" They shared a quiet laugh. In the weeks that followed, Aaron became the one bringing water, adjusting pillows, asking questions doctors didn't have time to answer. The roles reversed gently, without ceremony. One evening, his father watched him help a nurse reposition another patient in the shared room. Afterward, he said, "You're good at this." Aaron hesitated. "I don't always feel like I am." "That means you still care," his father replied. The words settled deep. After his father passed, grief rearranged Aaron's world again. It didn't stop him from working, but it changed how he worked. He listened more. He spoke less. He understood loss not as a concept, but as a constant companion people learned to carry. Months later, Aaron was asked to train new volunteers. Room was full of nervous faces, eager and unsure, mirrors of his past self. He told them the truth, not the polished version. "You will mess up," he said. You will feel useless. You will want to quit. That doesn't mean you should. It means you're paying attention. One young woman stayed after everyone else left. What if I get attached? She asked. Aaron thought of his father, the shelter steps, the socks on the sidewalk. You will, he said, and it will hurt, but it will also keep you human. As the years continued, small moments stitched themselves into his life. Shared jokes in impossible places. A man calling him months later just to say he was still sober. A woman sending a photo of her first apartment key. Losses too. Relapses. Funerals no one else attended. Aaron learned not to measure success the way reports demanded. He measured it in returned eye contact, in names remembered, in people who came back because someone had once stayed. One winter evening, during a citywide blackout, Aaron found himself directing people by flashlight, guiding them to warmth and food. Snow fell thick and silent, the city strangely hushed. For a brief moment, everything slowed. A teenager approached him, shivering. Why do you do this? The boy asked. Aaron opened his mouth, then closed it. The old answer, because someone helped me once, felt incomplete now. I do it, he said finally, because it reminds me that we're not alone, even when it feels like we are. The boy nodded, as if storing the answer away for later. Much later, walking home through snow-muffled streets, Aaron stopped at a familiar intersection. The subway station entrance was there, unchanged, commuters rushing past as always. He stood off to the side, watching. A cyclist swerved suddenly, tires slipping. Before fear could rise, two strangers stepped forward together, steadying the bike. Aaron didn't move. He smiled. The city had learned something too, he thought. Or maybe it had always known, and he was just late to the lesson. Aaron continued walking, his steps steady, his hands empty, his heart full of names and stories that no longer weighed him down the way they once had. He had helped once. He had helped again. And now, he understood that the point was never how many times he stepped in, but that he taught himself and others how to step forward at all. Time did what it always did. It moved forward without asking permission. Aaron no longer counted years by calendars but by seasons of faces. Some stayed briefly, some returned again and again, some vanished without goodbye. He learned not to chase closure. In his line of work, endings were rare and beginnings often looked like chaos. The city had changed. New buildings rose where old shelters once stood. Rents climbed. Resources shrank. The need did not. Aaron adapted. He spent more time advocating, now sitting in meetings where words like budget, capacity, and liability floated through the air, heavy and detached. He spoke calmly but firmly, translating lived pain into language officials could digest. It exhausted him in a different way than the streets had. Less visible, more political, necessary. Not everyone liked him. A supervisor once told him, "You care too much, you'll burn bridges." Aaron replied, "Some bridges deserve to burn if they only lead in one direction." That night, he wondered if he'd gone too far. Doubt still visited him, just less dramatically. It arrived in quieter forms: missed calls, funding denied, programs closed with polite emails. On those days, he returned to the ground. He walked routes he used to walk, spoke to people who knew him not as a title but as a presence. One afternoon, he sat on the steps of a library with a woman named Celia who had lost her housing after a medical emergency. She spoke slowly, carefully, as if words were fragile things. "I hate asking for help," she said. Aaron nodded. "Most people do." She studied him. "You don't look like someone who's winning." The comment surprised a laugh out of him. "I don't think this is a game you win," she smiled faintly. "Good. I was worried it was." Moments like that grounded him more than any success story ever could. As Aaron grew older, younger workers began looking to him for answers. He resisted the role at first. He didn't feel wise. He felt tired, still learning. But one evening, after a long outreach shift, a new caseworker named Eli asked him, "How do you keep going?" Aaron thought about the question for a long time. "I don't," he said finally. "I stop sometimes. I rest. I let other people carry things, then I come back." Eli seemed relieved by that. Around this time, Aaron reconnected with parts of himself he'd neglected. He started painting again, nothing impressive, just shapes and colors that helped him release what language couldn't hold. He took longer walks without purpose. He learned to cook properly instead of eating whatever was fastest. Self-care had once sounded selfish to him. Now it sounded practical. One spring morning, Aaron received an invitation to speak at a city forum on community intervention and public safety. He hesitated before accepting. Public speaking still made his hands sweat. Standing at the podium, looking out at rows of unfamiliar faces, he told a story not polished, not heroic. He spoke about a moment near a subway station years ago, about fear and instinct, about how one act didn't make him special but made him awake. "Helping isn't about fixing people," he said. "It's about interrupting harm long enough for something else to happen." Afterward, a woman approached him with tears in her eyes. "My son died because no one stopped," she said quietly. "Thank you for teaching people to stop." Aaron carried that sentence with him for a long time. Not all days were meaningful. Some days were paperwork and silence. Some days were arguments over nothing. Some days were losses that no lesson softened. On those days, Aaron allowed himself to grieve without turning grief into purpose. He had learned that lesson the hard way. One evening, walking home late, he passed a small memorial on the sidewalk. Flowers, candles, a photograph taped to a pole. He didn't know the person. He stood anyway, head bowed, acknowledging a life he'd never meet. Years ago, he would have felt responsible. Now, he felt present. His hair began to gray. His knees complained more often. The city kept rushing, as it always had. Aaron learned to match its pace without letting it pull him under. One summer, he took a month-long break for the first time in decades. He traveled nowhere. He stayed local, visited museums, sat in parks, watched children play and couples argue and strangers cross paths. Without noticing each other, he noticed. That was the difference. On the last day of his break, he returned to the subway station, the same one, though everything around it had changed. The rails were better marked now. Signs warned cyclists. Barriers stood where there had once been nothing. Progress, slow and imperfect. Aaron stood at the edge of the sidewalk, not as a reminder of the past but as a witness to the present. People hurried by, lives intersecting for seconds at a time. A pup hurried at a time. Man dropped his bag. Someone helped him pick it up. A child tripped. A stranger steadied her. No buses screeched. No dramatic rescues. Followed. Just small interruptions of care. Aaron felt something close to peace. He understood now that his life had not been transformed by a single heroic moment, but by what he chose to do afterward, again and again, imperfectly, quietly. Helping once had opened a door. Choosing to keep helping, while also choosing to live, had taught him how to stay. As he turned away from the station and walked home, Aaron felt no need to look back. The city carried the lesson forward in countless unseen ways, and somewhere, someone was stepping into the street, not because they felt brave, but because they felt human. That was enough.